Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's David Cherry. Today, I want to talk with you about a different way of doing your creative work, a different way of podcasting, of writing your newsletter or your blog or your social media posts, a different way of creating YouTube videos like this. And ideally, it's going to be something that's going to make it much easier for you. It's going to be a bit surprising. It's going to be more enjoyable as you actually create your work. And I think you'll actually create some better results as well. All of this started from working with a really great author coach who's worked with good authors like Ali Abdaal and Pat Flynn. His name's Azul Terronez, and he's flipped things upside down for me in a very positive way. What Azul's been teaching me about creativity and about creative work is that you really don't want to have such a strong agenda when you're going into the work. Instead, you want to actually disappear into the work that you're doing while you're creating it so that you yourself have a discovery process, so that you yourself get to be spontaneous and in the moment. Let me give you a few examples to make this more concrete, and then we can explore it a little bit deeper. Imagine you're about to go on a podcast or you're going to give a presentation. A lot of people think that if they have all of the exact things that they want to say, if they can just prep enough, then they can go into that conversation and deliver the lines the right way. Or maybe you're writing a blog post and you think to yourself, I have a very clear message I'm trying to say. Here's exactly what I'm trying to communicate. Here's my big idea. I've got the bullet points, boom, boom. Now I'm writing it. When we go into situations like that, what we don't leave room for is our own unique discovery. What we don't leave room for is our own spontaneity. And so if you've ever spontaneously just said something while on a podcast and you're like, wow, that came out great, or you wrote something and you thought to yourself, oh, I didn't even know I thought that, or where did that come from? What you start to see is that you can create not from a place of overthinking and planning and controlling and having an agenda, but you can instead be spontaneous and create in the moment in a way that is going to feel very alive for you and therefore is more likely to feel very alive for others. So when you go into the podcast or the meeting or the writing session or crafting your social media posts, the more of a very specific agenda that you have that you're trying to create for the other person, strangely and paradoxically, often the less resonant what you create is for the other person. It's like people can feel that you have this very specific agenda, that you're trying to drive them to this very specific point, and they just don't really resonate with that as much. It'd be like trying to follow a script that you had planned in your head in an interview when the interviewer is asking you questions that are completely different. But now you're like, wait a second, this doesn't fit with my script. Let me try and still force this into the conversation. That's very different than being present, being available, being spontaneous about what it is that you're doing. The good news is that we do this all the time, right? We do this in conversations with people. We do this when we're journaling and we're not expecting to get anywhere. And we just see how things naturally flow. I feel that this is the reason people get really hung up when they're on camera. If you've ever filmed somebody else trying to recite lines or trying to create a YouTube video, as soon as the camera turns on, people's persona changes and suddenly they think they have to say something right or they have to follow the script. And when they do that, they freeze up and everything feels a bit forced. So maybe you've struggled to actually find yourself being more comfortable on camera because you weren't allowing yourself to actually dissolve into the process. And that's really the deeper idea that I'm getting at here, is that when you're writing, as an example, for something that you're creating, we think that we should write what we know. We think that we should write things that we've already figured out or record videos about things we've already figured out. And because of that, we're essentially trying to get connected back to the past. So you're trying to think to yourself, what do I already know? What's the point that I know well that I can make? When you do that, you leave the present. And when you leave the present, you lose some of the vitality that you have that you're able to communicate through whatever work it is that you're doing. And so if you're writing what you already know and you're communicating about your past, then it's not alive for you now. So instead of writing what you already know or creating what you already know, Instead, you can open up to discovering what it is that you're going to create while you're doing it. You can discover what you're going to say while you're saying it. As I record this video, while I do have a bit of direction, I am discovering myself what I'm saying to you as I'm saying it. And I believe that has a very different quality when other people connect with you over what it is that you're creating. So rather than writing and creating what you already know in the past, be present and discover what it is that you're going to create in the future while you do it. So in the interview, being more spontaneous and present and going with where things are, you're naturally going to say these things that you're surprised that you even knew or could say. You pull this rabbit out of your hat. You're like, where did that come from? The same thing is true in your writing. You can start to wander and discover, oh, this is what I have to say about this subject. It's not something that's done or complete, or I know this for a fact, and therefore I'm going to state it in this piece. Instead, you can ponder and discover and create from a place of openness. This is very different than editing and organizing. It's a different muscle. There's the creative spark, which is creating off the cuff and discovering what you're creating as you create it. You're in flow, you've got spontaneity, you're present to the experience you're having. You're not just trying to connect to the past, you're trying to connect with, how do I connect that idea today in the present and then communicate it now, even if it sounds different than the way I communicated it in the past? That's different than editing and organizing, which can happen after. So once you've got this creative spark and you've done the work, the podcast, written the speech, made the presentation, whatever it is, it's okay to then go back after that and say, how do I organize this a little bit better? How do I edit this down, right? Even this type of recording I'm doing now could have better editing to make the idea more tight, to make the idea more complete. But we don't want that editor to show up too early. Instead, we want to lose ourselves in the process to find flow and to communicate something that is truly in our own sort of energy in that moment. And then afterward, we can clean it up and we can work on it from there. So moving forward, the next time you do a writing session, the next time you do a podcast, the next time you create a presentation, any work or creative work, see if you can lean into experiencing that work live in real time instead of trying to make it into something or forcing it into the plan that you had or controlling it to have the right message. Let those things go, start walking into the work that you're doing and explore as you go along. And then after the fact, if you need to clean things up a little bit, you can do that. This is a much more enjoyable experience. I think you'll find that because you're able to connect to this bigger aspect of yourself that is present, that is vital, maybe is even beyond you, right? People talk about the muse. So try that next time you're getting some work done and see how it changes not only how you feel, but how the work actually comes out. I hope that helps. I'll be back again with more videos like this very soon. Later.